Welcome back, everybody, to Real Estate Junkies, Coast to Coast. I'm your co host, Rusty Ham, on the West Coast.
And I'm Rick Abbiati from the East Coast.
Rick, it's been a while, buddy. How are you?
Fantastic, Rusty. And you?
I'm doing great, man. The weather is nice. I hear the East Coast weather is nice, finally.
Yep, 4th of July weekend coming up, and it's in the 80s and sunny.
Yeah, you guys get that, like 2 weeks out of the year? Something like that, right? Yeah, so let's get on with the show, Rick. Again, the show is based on three pillars: mindset, skill set, and systems. That's our warm up, our game plan. We usually talk about either lease purchase, owner financing, sub two, or a lease purchase, executive lease purchase, or AO. And then we'll have our cool down. Our warm up today is going to be mindset. And you've done a few things in the community as far as their why, and you're recognizing what lately.
I'm recognizing all of a sudden we've been focusing on people's whys. And I know, in fact, I've had a call over the last few weeks working with somebody on their why and kind of drilling into it because everybody thinks they know their why, but most people don't really know what their why is because when your why becomes emotional, it really charges you and gets you through those challenges and picks your level of motivation up because who wants to make cold calls? That's yeah, it's fun now because we're used to doing it and you enjoy talking to sellers. But what I'm really noticing is all of a sudden people that have been around for a little while are all of a sudden running hard. And this past weekend, you and I both know we alternate weekends for between you and Mike and I for on call, which is for emergencies and deals that the seller can't wait. And usually it's fairly quiet on weekends. But this weekend I had a lot of appointments. I was on the calls with the sellers and three-way calls. So I've had, I think, a record number of appointments over the past few days with associates.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, it's when you have a strong why, getting on the phone is a lot easier, right? It's just some people will post their why, and I think you did it, right next to your computer, and you're staring at it, and it's like, okay, that's motivation right there. I'm gonna get on the phones because I need this, right? I need to get rid of my W-2. I need to supplement my income in order to do X, Y, or Z, right? So, but you said a couple things right there, getting us involved, and that is on three-way calls. What we'll do is we'll call. I just wanted to backtrack, and we can get into why a lot more. But when we do, we call sellers for our associates. So what happens is the associate will call us. We'll kind of powwow a little bit, maybe 5 minutes before we're supposed to call. Go over the lead, go over the lead sheet, get their motivation. And then what happens is our associates will call this, will add the seller, merge us back in. So now there's a three-way. And then the associate will just introduce us, right? And at that point, the associate should, sometimes they don't, they should just be quiet. And then now we're on the phone with the associate seller that they're trying to get buy their house from. And we have a nice conversation. And our goal at that point is to try to get them on an appointment. Speaking of appointments, then sometimes when they go on appointments, we'll call in while they're at the appointment and we're talking to the seller, as the associates at the appointment, right? And that was my first deal. My first deal with Mike McCready's. I was at the appointment. I set the phone right in front of on the kitchen table. Mike called in. Seller and Mike, you know, talked about details on how the thing would work, and then I ended up getting it taken. So I just wanted to backtrack and just kind of describe how we work with our associates.
Yeah, actually, Sunday morning, I was scheduled for somebody that was on an appointment to talk to the seller, and I had previously talked to the seller on a three-way call, like you had mentioned. And when we were on the call, as soon as he put the seller on, the line died. He called me back and he says, "Well, I've got to get on Wi-Fi
Mm.
because cell signal's not good. I said, okay, I'll wait for the call. Next thing you know, it comes up FaceTime. I'm thinking, good thing I was dressed.
That's funny. Well, and you had Facebook, but I mean, we're old enough to have Facebook, right? It's not like you're in your 20s.
Yeah, yeah. So,
But go. So the why is important. That's huge that you said that. Not only because you're talking to most of the associates that you were helping, you have in your group calls each week, right? And then, but you also help with the higher group, the high six group, which is what I work with. And there is a handful, and I told Chris this, that group is on fire as well. We have a ton of high sixers, and I've never seen this activity. We both have been in your community. What, you've been 4 years? I've been 6. Yep, and this is the most active, I think, of any group that we've had. I believe, don't you think?
yeah, I got quite a few people who were making 30 calls a week, and now they're up well over 100 calls a week. Just
Yeah,
sudden they just shot forward.
and I think that's a testament to you and making them define their why early, right? And saying, hey, if you really want this, then you need to do X, Y, and Z. If you don't want it, then you're probably in the wrong place. And we tell sellers that all the time. We tell sellers, we're probably not the best fit for you, because if you want to sell traditionally and want your money out right away, then we're probably not the right fit. Same goes with associates. If you're not willing to put in the work and do everything and we've done nine traits. We did the 9 traits a while back. If you guys want to go back to that episode, but we did 9 traits of a successful associate. And if you have a really strong why, you're going to do those 9 traits
And
because,
if you're not doing the 9 traits, you're selling yourself short.
right. And the odds of you being successful are very low. No, I love it. Yeah, the why is super important, and you got to revisit the why because sometimes it changes, right? It's not all it's very fluid, right?
My initially, I've achieved my initial why, so I'm gonna reset. And because I noticed, oh, I'm not doing what I used to be doing, so I
Right.
right away I knew it was my why, and so I had to revisit that.
Yeah, both of us, right? We're both actively looking to stop our W-2 and being
Exactly.
chained to, somebody else. We're working for somebody else's Rolex, right, so to speak. And so we both actively were trying to get out of it, and we did. And then that goal changed, or that why changed, and now we're looking. We changed our why and revisited that. Good stuff. Let's get into our game plan, because this was we just had our office hours, which we had an episode of our office hours. I'm not sure what episode it is, but we did an office hours episode, and we have veterans in there, people that have been in the community for 2, maybe 3 years, and then we have some newbies, right? And some of these newbies come in with questions that they're good questions. It's because they're new and they're not familiar with how things work or how it goes. And sometimes it's good for the veterans to hear it too, right? Because sometimes they get complacent. So this one came in from a guy who's brand new. He just came in last week as an apprentice. And again, apprentice is a 12-week program. Not terribly expensive to get in, right? It's very limited coaching. You do get some coaching, but it's limited. If you want to check it out, the link is in our show notes. So you just click on that link and it'll direct you right to the apprentice program. But this is apprentice, and he is dabbling. He's got shiny object syndrome, I can tell, because I got this CRM, or I got this, LLC, or I don't know if you heard, some of the things he was, grabbing out of thin air. But so he wants to fix what he's fixing. No, he was buy and hold right now.
Yep. And he's looking at some fix and flips, but the people that most likely wholesalers are paying too much, which is leaving him high and dry. He can't do that. And so he knows that fix and flip and wholesaling, you're generally dealing with properties that are they need work. Whereas, he said, I know in this community you're dealing with pretty houses. And I did correct him because that's not necessarily the case. because creative financing can be used on any property as long as it's livable.
Well, you can do creative financing with anything. You can do creative financing on a car, right? You can owner
Right.
finance a car. So I see what you're saying. Yeah, because he had the misconception that what we do, lease purchase, owner financing, whatever, is going to be a nice cookie cutter house in a really pristine neighborhood. Three bedroom, two baths, or 4 bedroom, three bath. You know, and that's not always the case. In fact, one of our old coaches, remember Steve, he got it was almost down to the studs. I think there was one room that was available for the potential buyer to stay in, but we sell it at a handyman special, right? So we want to obviously get it at a good price so we can sell it to somebody who can put sweat equity into it. And then when they fix it up, obviously it's going to be, the after repair value is going to be a lot nicer than what we bought it for. But yeah, his misconception was it's just nice homes. We're just looking for nice homes, and that's not always the case, right?
Right. And we are not renovating anything. That's fix and flip. There are some cases where maybe a property does need some work and you're not able to move it for some reason, where you may put some into it, but that's not the general. It's usually our tenant buyers, and I've had quite a few properties that they were livable, but the buyers that we put in there really wanted to build their own equity into the house, and they took it on as a challenge.
Yeah. So we buy as is and we sell as is. If you want to simplify it, um, and we're buying, which is weird because like you said, fix and flippers, they're trying to create, they're trying to create, you know,
But
equities. They're trying to create that value. So that's why they come in at 70 cents, 75 cents on the dollar, so that when they put in whatever work they need to put in, that after repair value is going to create, some cash at the end of the day. So they want to create that value. Like you said, we are not looking for that instant value. Our value is going to come on the premium where we sell it at a tenant buyer. The three paydays, right? The payday one, which is the down payment, the payday two, which is our spread that we make between the buyer and the seller, and then the payday three, which is a combination of principal pay down and the premium. So we make our money on the buyer's side, not on the seller side, where we're trying to get instant equity on that. So we cleared that up because he was confused. He's like, you guys, pre foreclosure, and we told him, right, to pre foreclosures, you might have to have some capital, right? I mean, that's just a reality because they're going to be behind on payments probably, and the house is probably not in very good shape. So you might have to come in with some money, but again, we're only going to catch them up in the arrears and pay closing costs. We don't, if it's moving ready, we don't necessarily care what it looks like on the inside, because what we're going to do is we're going to pass that on to the buyer. Everything's contingent. Sometimes it's not, but I would say 95% of the times it's going to be contingent on finding a buyer.
the
And there
only
is, yeah,
the only time it's not contingent on a buyer if it's a really sweet deal and you've got the cap.
right. And so we always make it contingent on finding a buyer. And the beauty of that is there's buyers out there that not necessarily can afford to get a loan today, but they need time, and they're willing to put in the work to get their credit fixed up and also put in the work to make the house look nice, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as they're not putting in like an addition to the house, like a second floor. I mean, they can, but if they get permit, if it requires a permit, then they have to ask permission, right? And then they would have to give us the plans to make sure that, you know,
Yeah, I had a seller. It was for a three-way call, but the seller came back with their terms, and it said no modifications can be done to the house over the time frame until it's paid in full.
right,
And I cleared that up with the seller, and they got it. They realized it's only to their benefit because we do require that it be built, the work be done professionally and with a permit and with our approval. So it's only going to improve the value of the house.
right. Yeah. So what we mean when we pass on repairs and stuff like that. If they want to paint a room, they go for it, paint the room. Because what we're gonna do as the investor is, and people are like, gosh, you're just going to let them pay in the room, whatever. Again, we're treating them as buyers. They're putting a non-refundable down payment. Usually it's fairly large, 3 to 10%. So most of the time we try to get them to 10%. They're fully invested in this house. They're going to buy the house. Our success rate is very high because of the down payment they're putting down. So, and we're treating them as the buyers. They're paying for the taxes on the home. They're paying for their own insurance. So they're acting as the buyer. So, we want to treat them as a buyer. So if they want to paint the room, paint a room, go for it. The beauty of having these buyers is they're not calling us at midnight saying, hey, our toilet's clogged. They're responsible for that, right? Because they're buying the house. You're responsible for that, right? So that's the beauty of having our program is you're not going to get those calls. You're not going to get those, hey, the kitchen sink is clogged up, can you send somebody out? No, we're not saying is you hire somebody, you hire a plumber to get that whatever you need done on your sink.
Yep, I remember specifically having a tenant buyer in the property, and within 18 months, she cashed out and closed on the property. And when she did, she had about 80 some odd $1,000 in equity.
Nice.
So, needless to say, it was definitely a win for her. It was a win for the seller, and it was a win for me.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's transition to the win of everybody except for my tenant buyers. It will be a win for the new buyer that is going to buy the house. But I recently had a sub two where the title transferred to me. I gave the seller 5% up front 2 years ago to buy the home. So the mortgage is still in the seller's name. The title is in my name. I put a rent to own buyer in there. They put a substantial amount of money down to get into the home. They were doing great for a year and 6 months, a year and a half. And then something happened, right? And let me preface this that my success rate with buyers is super high. I'm 1 out of 5 as far as buyers. I think your success rate is probably better than that, right?
It's around 90%.
Yeah. So meaning the one didn't fulfill their option. The other 4 fulfilled their option and bought the home. So we have a very high success rate. This one, life event happened. They just stopped paying the bill in December. I gave them their notices. Went through the eviction process. As you probably know, in California, it's a long process. And, there's a lot of red tape in California. Finally got them out. This was complete trash. They had a cat and they just didn't take care of the home. So I have capital, thank God, because I'm going to fix up the house. I'm going to have to paint it, put carpet in it, do some repairs. But I'm still going to make money on the home, right? So even though the tenant buyer didn't fulfill their option, I'm still going to come out ahead. We just wanted I just wanted to describe how on my end, and you had somebody walk away, but just know that when we say we make money on the buyer side, I'm still going to make money on the buyer side. Probably not as much because now I'm going to put it on the market traditionally, and I'm going to have to pay the commissions and fees and all that BS that you have to go through when you sell the house traditionally. So if my tenant buyers were to cash me out, I would have made a boatload of money, right? Because I would have gotten the markup. I'm still getting the principal pay down, which is huge. It's just selling the house traditionally. It's I'm going to sell it at X amount with, somebody coming in 2% lower, commissions and fees, 5-6%, so that's what 8% almost off the sale price. I'm not happy about that, but I'm still going to come out ahead of the game. What about your tenant buyers that walked away?
So I had one, they were in the home for about a year. They had put down a non-refundable down payment. They were working their way towards the 10% down. And they realized with the wintertime and the expenses of the house, with the heat and the electric, they realized that they couldn't afford it. And I think there were some other things going on, whether they were buying things or whatever. I'm not sure. But they called me. They were very nice about it. They said, we can't afford to live here, and we've identified another place we're going to go ahead and rent, just rent a place. And so since they volunteered to leave, I did not have to go through an eviction process with them. So that was good. And so in the meantime, we're looking for another tenant buyer and we've got a lot of activity. So that will be happening soon. But in the meantime, I'm paying the mortgage payment to the seller and to the lender. It's not an exorbitant amount, but the down payment that I got from the tenant buyer easily covered that and anything I have for cleaning costs and whatnot. And I'll get a second non-refundable down payment from another buyer. So it's like getting two in the same property.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up. There's two things you said there. When we get the non-refundable down payment from the tenant buyer, we're not going out and buying Lamborghinis, right? We're not going out and spending it and and going just like you won the lottery and you're just going out and buying all these things. No, we house it in our account for occasions like this in case something does happen. Now, when the tenant buyer closes out, right now it's like okay, now we have this money sitting there that you can maybe go buy a property that needs a down payment, or maybe we can go buy. We're thinking buying properties, not necessarily buying cars and stuff, but we do want to house that money in case something does happen. Like in my case, they haven't been paying since December, so I've been paying on that mortgage. Again, they put a substantial amount of money down, so it wasn't like I was hurting. It was just I'm paying this mortgage on the seller's behalf, right?
Unfortunately, we get spoiled when deals go completely 100% good.
Right.
Then, oh, wait a minute, I've got to come out of pocket. Well, it's not really out of pocket. It's just I'm not going to make as much as I would have made.
Yeah, we call it OPM, right? Other people's money. It wasn't necessarily our money. It's the seller's money or the buyer's money that they put down as a down payment. Yeah, so good stuff. What do we got coming up? We have a In the Trenches boot camp coming up soon.
4th and 6th of August.
What dates?
4th, 5th, and 6th of August.
Okay, we have that, and then nothing in September.
Right, because we've got the live event coming up in October.
Yep, October 5 and 6 right now.
Yep, QLS Live in Boston.
So if you're interested in the In the Trenches boot camp, again, there's a link to that, which is a 3-day event. The first day we make phone calls for on leads. Second day we do deal structure, usually on the calls that we'd made on the previous day. And then the third day is we kind of choose somebody and say, hey, here's what your business would look like if you did this. This is how much you would make. Usually a business plan, right?
Right, and what we'll do is we'll try to pick somebody that already has their goals in mind and they're pretty much in concrete. And then we break down, okay, this is the plan of what you need to do to implement it to get.
Right. So that's the In the Trenches boot camp that's held in Rhode Island. Again, a 3-day event. Click that link. Then we have our QS Live, which is going to be, it's in Boston again. This will be a second year in a row. That's a 2-day event. It's a Monday and a Tuesday. So get your butts there. There's a link in there as well. And check it out. And come see me and Rick.
Sounds awesome.
All right. Rick, great seeing you again.
Like,
Yeah, I think we're going to get these out on Thursday mornings instead of Wednesday mornings from now on. So if you're listening, set your calendar for Thursday mornings, not Friday or Wednesday mornings. All right. Rick, take care, buddy.
great as always, Rusty.
All right.
Bye.